Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. Your old pal Jake, and today we are talking about the state of MAGA, as in how far away from reality they are, and how that should inform how we act going forward. Really enjoyed doing Salty Saturday. As I'm about to go into, I don't think it's necessarily worth engaging with MAGA folks all that much, but ooh, is it satisfying. I suppose it's worth it in that it is quite satisfying to heckle back a little bit. I'd rather focus on you all. Perhaps do a Sunday show of some sort where we go through the comments you guys left. Let me know if that sounds like it'd be of interest to you, and that's something we'll start putting together. Let's have a look at the readout. Somebody was in for, I forget who, somebody was in for Joy Reid recently, and they interviewed Jordan Klepper, wherein he showed some of the footage from recent MAGA rallies that he attended. And oh, folks, the followers of Trump and his philosophy don't live in the same world that you and I do, the one that's populated by facts. No, they live in a mystical reality where multiple contradictory things can be true at once. Here he is.
Let's hear what they had to say about who controls the military.
What is he doing as president?
He is in charge of the military.
Great.
The military is in charge of this whole thing.
The military were put in charge in 2018 when President Trump signed an executive order.
So they're very calmly right now saying that the government has been taken over by the military. And it sounds like they're saying that's something they approve of. They're okay with the military in secret running everything. Meaning under threat of a bullet. That's what it means if the military ran the government. So they're comfortable in their minds with a situation where that's how things are decided. Barrel of a gun.
American military arms that are going to Ukraine, we have Donald Trump to thank for that?
No.
That's
So they were aware. They're not denying that America has shipped weapons to Ukraine. They apparently don't like that America has done that. Oh, that's problematic. That's very problematic. And yet, they're sticking by their belief. So they're acknowledging that did happen. They don't think that's something Trump would have done. Ooh, that's telling in and of itself. And yet they're saying, let's find
Two
out.
militaries.
there's
There's two militaries. So in their mind, the military has had a civil war that they've kept quiet. They have kept the civil war quiet. And yet, one is running half the government, the other's running, I guess, the foreign policy?
There's two militaries.
There's a good and a bad.
So there's two militaries.
Okay.
Donald Trump's in charge of the good one.
Yes.
Biden's in charge of the bad military?
That's exactly right.
You have followed these folks for a number of years now. So how concerned are you about the fact that facts aren't relevant here? They still believe these kinds of conspiracies and these theories that are otherworldly.
The fact that facts aren't relevant isn't new, but I'm still surprised at these events, which should be worrisome to everyone. The fact that there's still ideas out here that go beyond what I've already heard at many of these events, it deeply concerns me. There's a larger question as to how widespread the support is. I think that's...
Well, I agree with him. I'm sure that's not everybody. The fact that you seem to get interviews like this all the time when you go to these rallies means it's a significant enough thing that multiple journalists can pick it up. We also have multiple attacks now around the nation from people citing insane QAnon stuff. I give you Nancy Pelosi's husband getting literally hit in the skull with a hammer. It's serious, folks. This is the opposition. The political opposition does not believe in reality, is more comfortable going on camera and saying they believe that the United States is controlled by two separate militaries. By the way, clearly confused, clearly hadn't really thought that through, and clearly had to make something up on the spot. Let's go back. Watch them make this up on the spot. You can see where they're confused. You can see that they're not like, no, it's two militaries, though. Here
Military
it is.
arms that are going to Ukraine. We have Donald Trump to thank for that.
No.
See, that right then. So he presents something that they didn't like the government doing. And he says, so the military, you believe, controls the government because you can't admit that you lost. They did that. And the reaction is that they had to think
Military
about
arms
it.
that are going to Ukraine. We have Donald Trump to thank for that.
Look at this lady. See that? Well, that doesn't line up. They're writing fan fiction on the spot. When I say they're not in reality, I don't just mean they've come up with an alternate reality. I mean, what is true no longer matters to them. They don't care if their fiction lines up with the facts perfectly. It just needs to enough to get them through a conversation. The look on screen right now is the danger. The look on screen these two have, where they are trying to think of an alternate theory. Now they come up with it. Let's listen.
No.
That's
two militaries.
there's two.
Oh, there we
there's
go.
Two
We got two
militaries.
There's a
militaries.
good and a bad.
So there's two militaries. Donald Trump's in charge of the good one.
Yes.
Biden's in charge of the bad military.
That's exactly right.
They either thought of that on the spot or they couldn't really recall it. But if it was just that they couldn't recall that little detail, don't you think it's kind of a huge detail? Like that's kind of a core belief. Like if you really thought that the military was secretly running things and then all of a sudden it does something that's totally contrary to what you think ought to happen, to what you think this military would do, don't you think it would be a big deal to you to figure out what's going on? And wouldn't that be a core part of your beliefs? So when you're interviewed by Jordan Klepper, you can right off the bat say, well, the thing is, we have a domestic military situation right now, and unfortunately a split with, you would lead with that, is my point. That is a big enough deal. That's a big enough part of your story that you would lead with that. But they don't really believe this. They're playing pretend. Dangerously. They are LARPing with politics. They think nobody understands this. Nobody at our level understands this. All those lefties are also just making up stories. Clearly, we need to just make up some strong stories of our own.
Just saw there are folks out there who will deny reality to its face and will just blindly put their vote in and their life behind this one man, no matter what he says. And that's, as always, it's scary this time around.
Yeah,
My point in showing you that is that we have to be serious about the folks we're dealing with. I've seen so many people on the left try to approach us saying like, well, listen, you can't be mean to these people. You can't be brusque with them. You can't be this and that and the other thing. There's a huge difference between somebody who believes in what MAGA's up to or did believe and is waking up, is honestly approaching looking at facts again. Odds are they're not going to come into a place like this. But if they do, you'll be able to know who they are because we'll throw something else. We'll throw something out there that's harsh, but we'll pair it with facts, such as the fact that we are sending aid to Ukraine, and they'll have to deal with that reality. If they're willing to not be baby, good, they're ready. We did that whole Salty Saturday thing basically because those were a bunch of people that weren't bringing facts to the conversation. If they are ready to join the adult table, they're not going to be turned away by somebody being a little harsh with them. In fact, they would expect somebody, if they are as wrong as we say they are, they would expect our behavior to be fed up, to be annoyed, to be short. Of all the lefties you can think of, which is the one that is most liked by the far right? Is it an old man? Does he talk like this? Does he not take a lot of crap from people? Yeah, he's a nice guy, but Bernie Sanders doesn't mince words. He speaks honestly. And when you use kid gloves with MAGA, they're not ever going to be like, well, this guy is treating me nice, so maybe that's the good one. This gal didn't call me out on all my racist stuff. She just said, well, I have a different opinion, and maybe you want to... No. Don't waste your time. You will burn your energy trying to talk to those two old ladies who I'm sure are perfectly sweet when you're face to face with them, but they're voting for a tyrant. If they're in a place where they're making up alternate possibilities on the fly that they are going to commit to and act like they've always believed, you're going to be wasting your energy trying to convert them. Right now, we have more numbers than them. We should be, in my opinion, focusing our effort on activating those people and getting them working together in focused campaigns to change one thing at a time to make America better. Good news is this strategy is very possible with the numbers we have right now. But I do think that we waste our energy in reaching our hands out to people who are delusional. Here's the consequences of wasting our energy. Here's the consequences of those people getting election after election, squeezing in candidates who are not popular broadly, but have been either gerrymandered or, God help us, the Democrats lost elections they shouldn't have. This is the consequence. The House GOP have disbanded the Civil Rights Committee.
Just days after the nationwide protests over the fatal Memphis police beating of Tyree Nichols, Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman James Comer, eliminated the subcommittee on civil rights and civil liberties. My next guest proposed an amendment to reinstate the civil rights panel, but it was voted down along party lines. Joining me now in studio, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congresswoman Crockett, welcome back to the Sunday Show. Why should there be a subcommittee on civil rights and civil liberties?
Well, considering where we are in this country, I don't even think it should be up for debate, unfortunately. This subcommittee existed before. This subcommittee was responsible for voting rights issues. As we know in this country, there's a few questions around voting rights. Some of us fled our state and had warrants surrounding voting rights. In addition to all the police brutality, everyone could unanimously say that what happened in Memphis was problematic. Well, what really did happen in Memphis? How did we get here? That is the question. How do we make sure that there is not another Tyree Nichols? And so it's important that we have this oversight.
This follows the same pattern every single time. A tragedy happened. The whole country says we ought to do something about it. Democrats try, Republicans resist, and that's that. Every single time. Some school's going to get shot up this year. It's going to happen. A bunch of kids are going to die, and then you're going to have Democrats say we should have reasonable gun reform. And you're going to have Republicans say, how dare you use this tragedy to push your politics? Well, the politics happen to deal with making such a tragedy not happen ever again. Another black guy gets killed by police officers. Keeps on happening. Jim Jordan, as we covered, gets on the news and says there was really no way we could have done legislation to stop this from happening. And yet, other countries all around the world have set themselves up in a way where this is not happening constantly. So we can do something. And if you want to know why it never happens, why we never do anything, it's this moment right now. This is the moment where America ceases paying attention. They'll pay attention to the horrific footage of a man getting beaten to death. They'll pay attention to that footage. But this is boring. This is a press release. This is an interview on a Sunday show. An interview about what? Disbanding the Civil Rights Panel. A step in the process that would have done something about it. This is where the evil is permitted. Right here. If you want it to stop. This is the sort of thing we need to show our representatives that we care about.
And we use it in a smart way. The idea that next week I'm going to be dealing with Twitter and Hunter Biden's laptop, these are the priorities. That is a problem when we have people that are dying in the streets. So I think that this was a very common sense amendment. And Marjorie Taylor Greene seemed to agree, kinda.
Kinda. You brought her up. Let's play this, what she had to say about Tyree Nichols.
Yeah, don't get excited. Marjorie Taylor Greene has not put on a Black Lives Matter shirt all of a sudden.
I do agree with you about Tyree Nichols' death. I watched the video, and it was tragic and extremely difficult to watch. I would also like to point out that that city is Democrat-controlled, and the 5 officers that have been arrested and charged are black. And I think that this isn't an issue of racism or anything like that. I'd like to also point something that I'd hope you share with me.
It is an issue of racism if the system itself is designed to push down a specific race.
There's a woman in this room whose daughter was murdered on January 6th, Ashley Babbitt. And
Jesus.
Ashley Babbitt there's never been a trial. As a matter of fact, no one has cared about the person.
Yeah, because it would be uncouth to hold a trial for a dead woman, and if there was a trial to be held about her death, it would be to underline how responsible she was for it. Sad? Yes. You know what? Maybe put Fox on trial for inducting her into a cult. Maybe put QAnon, the guy that is behind that account, on trial. Sure, not the person that shot her. She was trying to overthrow the country.
Person that shot and killed her.
Congresswoman Crockett, wow. Ashley Babbitt was an insurrectionist. I said it. Your reaction to Congresswoman Green?
Before she goes, not controversial to say that. She absolutely was.
So interestingly enough, this was just an organizational meeting. And so it was my first time. So I was like, where is the clap back button? I was like, which button is the... Because I didn't know, but, it was really offensive. He had not even been buried, and you drew this false equivalency. There was no equivalency. This was a black man driving down the street in America trying to get to his mama's house who had not committed a crime versus an insurrectionist who was coming to kill some of your colleagues or harm them in some way. The fact that you think that they're on the same level is a problem for me, because you're basically saying that a white woman in America committing a crime should be given the same deference as a black man who simply was driving down the street, not committing a crime.
She's literally saying that. She's literally saying that. Yeah.
You think that that's the same level? And the fact that she had that young lady's mom in the room as a prop on that day, it was almost like we planned this and I walked into it. But it is offensive. We do know that we need, part of this that you didn't play was her talking about our prisons. And so she said, we do need to investigate, because the January 6ers that are going to jail and prison, you know what? That's a problem. Those conditions are bad. All of a sudden we care about. All of a sudden. It's bad because of the January 6th insurrectionists.
Both these issues on the MAGA voters, as well as the people they have voted into office. What can we do? Number one, folks, vote in primaries. The primaries are how we move the Overton window, the scale of what is acceptable in American politics. That has been going right for a very long time. Lefties have not been, by and large, very involved in politics. Every step of the process, we got to be there. Primaries being among the most important in terms of your overall things you can do. Also, our representatives are still used to us not paying attention. They're used to us not watching that clip just then. They know we saw the clip of Tyre Nichols being killed. They know we saw that, or at least are aware that it happened. Most of them do not know that we're aware that Republicans are doing things right now to ensure that this keeps on happening. That means if your representative is a middle-of-the-road Republican, they think, ooh, this isn't something I've got to worry about. I don't have to make a decision on. No one's going to talk to me about it. That means if they're a middle-of-the-road Democrat, they can say the same thing. They don't want to pick any fights. Make sure they know you saw that. Write them an email, link in the description. Ask them, what are you going to do about this? Civil Rights Committee just got disbanded following the deaths of two. Wasn't just Tyre Nichols in that week. 2 Americans at the hands of cops. What are you going to do about it, Representative? What am I going to hear you say about this? It's worth doing. Why? Because if nothing else, it lets them know you see and you expect action. There is something to be said for the collective pressure we offer. And they act differently when they know eyes are on them. Jim Green says, keep fighting the good fight, Jake. Good things will happen. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. A new fairness in media doctrine would go a long way in countering the madness. I wholeheartedly agree, Jim. Yes, it certainly would. I'm working on a longer episode about what to do about Fox News specifically. I do think targeting these media outlets one at a time is a worthy endeavor, and I do think a relatively small amount of savvy media users could make quite a dent in the effect they have. But I want to dot all my I's and cross all my T's. Mars Falcon says the woman in the room that is concerned about dear Ashley bibbity bobbity boo should have raised Ashley to discern lies from truth and told her not to try to overthrow her government based upon such lies. Mars Falcon, I agree. I definitely agree. It seems like Ashley Babbitt was a troubled young woman, but we cannot pretend like what she did was in any way acceptable. It wasn't. She was in the middle of a coup against the U.S. government. We've seen now who votes these people into office, what happens when these people get voted into office in terms of their legislation. Now let's look at the effects of their legislation. Prevailing wage laws are laws that affect largely government contractors, and they mean that the workers in a given geographic region, usually a state, have to be paid a certain amount that is considered the prevailing wage of that state. The reason being to prevent the state from shipping in workers to work at a very low cost, or having a big project that they can promise a lot of work on, but then only pay a very low wage for that work. It's essentially like a minimum wage per project. A lot of these laws got repealed, including in Michigan. Now we have a report on what the effects of that were, and it's every bit as brutal as you'd imagine. Let's have a look at the article. This is from Business Insider. It turns out that getting rid of some minimum wage controls left workers earning less, being less productive, relying more on public assistance, and even facing a higher risk of dying on the job. That's according to a new study from the Illinois Economic Policy Institute and Project for Middle Class Renewal at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Researchers Frank Manzo, Robert Bruno, and Larissa Petrucci examined the impact of repealing prevailing wage laws that essentially set minimum wages for construction workers on government contracts. Bear in mind, you're working on the roads. Odds are you're working on a government contract, so most road workers. With the bipartisan infrastructure pouring billions of dollars into construction projects across the nation, the findings show that contractors in states that have repealed those prevailing wage laws may face problems staffing up, no duh. Historically, prevailing wage laws have helped plug labor shortages, as in if you pay people a decent wage, they will take a job. And contractors could have trouble competing with higher paying competitors across the country. Here are the states, if you live in them. Make a note. Indiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, Wisconsin, and Michigan, to my shame, all repealed their prevailing wage laws between 2015 and 2018. Good news in Michigan, they are working on repealing the repeal. Using data from the U.S. Census Bureau and Department of Labor, the researchers looked at how construction workers fared as those laws were rolled back. It is, folks, exactly what you'd imagine. Those states saw their wages for construction workers drop, as in poorer people now in their state. In Indiana, West Virginia, and Kentucky, the three states that fully repealed prevailing wage laws, average construction hourly wages were $23.94 before the laws were rolled back, and by 2017, the average hourly wage was $23.77. Their wages overall dropped. Meanwhile, states with the laws in place saw wages grow by 12.2% in the same period. They're making 12.2% less than workers in other states. What prevailing wage does, it kind of standardizes and stabilizes the industry of a local market, Petrucci said. When you repeal that, what you have is contractors who are able to undercut wages and pay workers far below the training that they have developed to get these kinds of jobs. Naturally, you're going to see wages decrease. Workers' productivity grew at a far slower rate than in states with prevailing wage rates in place, as did hours worked. Just across the board, a worse job being done. There's also a real human cost to repealing the laws. On-the-job fatality rates went up in states that fully repealed their laws. In states that kept the laws, fatality rates on the job actually went down. Some of that is due to training or lack thereof, according to Manzo, and experience. It's also according to experience. Better trained workers tend to be much safer, he said. Well, there you go. Prevailing wage attracts and develops skilled construction workers by including apprenticeship training contributions in with labor costs. Sure, absolutely. And think about the cascading effect that has. You're paying insufficient wage, you're going to have a labor shortage on top of a skills shortage. If you are a skilled road worker of some sort, you are simply going to go wherever you get paid for for your skills. Unless you are forced to stay locally for some reason, family obligation, yada, yada, you're going to go where the money is. It's going to leave us with inexperienced road workers, new road workers, and not enough of them. So you'll have those that have experience that stay behind, they're going to be overworked. They're going to be working with a bunch of new guys. You're going to have mistakes from rushing then, as well as mistakes from newbies, as well as mistakes from newbies rushing to try to get a job done. How quality is that road being worked on? How reliable is that bridge that was built? Less than in states that had prevailing wage laws. The farther down you get, starts with that really fascinating Jordan Klepper interview, and let's see these ladies say crazy things. Yeah. And because they don't live in reality, they give us Marjorie Taylor Greene in office. Gets a little more boring. It's something that happened behind the scenes. It's a motion to disband this committee or that. A little more boring, but that's where the death blow is. The bleeding out is what we just read. Things like prevailing wage laws getting taken away. Very boring. Bunch of words, charts, graphs, year-over-year growth. But if you wonder what it looks like when America is governed badly, how it starts, when the decisions are made, what the consequences are, there's your chain of events right there. I've been watching it happen over and over. It seems silly to say it's Republicans. Truth be told, it's not just Republicans. There's corruption with Democrats. There are poor decisions made here and there, but by and large, that is the element of our society that is bringing about the worst of the country's decay. Because insane decisions are made like this constantly. What can you do about it? Well, when you are writing your representative, if you're from one of those states, tell them you want prevailing wage laws. There is a link in the description which tells you everybody who represents you. Find the people who represent you on a state level using that link. Tell them you want prevailing wage laws restored. You can cite this article from Business Insider. You can cite the study it links to. That is a great way to get your state back on track. It's not sensational. It's a regulation that insists workers get paid a fair amount. But I'll tell you, you'll have better roads, better workers, happier workers. You'll have more people with money in their pockets. This is the boring stuff that we have to get passionate about because it really does have an effect on how our lives are lived. Let me know if you think we should do a show that focuses on viewer comments from the Wicked community. I like the idea, but I don't want to put you on the spot if it seems like something that would be not fun for you. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for what you can do. I'll see you next time.